Center time. Kennedy right now is at 84 minutes, O'Hare into the Burns Circle interchange. The Kennedy on the outbound side, 45 minutes to O'Hare. As you're traveling on the Ike inbound, it's an hour 20, 390 to the old post office. Slow on the Dan Ryan, 37, 95th into the Burns Circle interchange. Delays on DuSable Lakeshore Drive northbound. You'll hit the brakes right at Foster. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Now your official Chicagoland weather forecast in our ReviveYourLawn.com weather center. Here's Steve Williams.
Sunshine, breezy, chilly day. High today 48. Tonight partly cloudy, chilly. Wrapping up those plants again from some potential frost. Low 34. Sunny to partly cloudy, warmer day tomorrow. The high 59. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560. The Answer.
39 at O'Hare, 40 at Midway, and your next news update is at 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So yesterday, the Senate passed the $95 billion foreign aid package, with the majority going to Ukraine and some to Israel, some to the Indo-Pacific. And this was Pagliacci Schumer on the Senate floor thanking Speaker Johnson for his leadership. Talk about being damned with faint praise.
I thank Leader McConnell, as I've mentioned before, working hand in hand with us, not letting partisanship get in the way. I thank Speaker Johnson, who rose to the occasion. In his own words, said he had to do the right thing despite the enormous political pressure on him. And I thank Leader Jeffries, who worked so well together in his bipartisan way with Speaker Johnson. And let me say this once again about my friend, the Republican leader. We were of one mind to get this bill done. It was our bipartisanship, our linking of arms together, that got this large and difficult bill through the Congress, despite many political ideologues who wanted to bring it down. Bipartisanship once again prevailed, and I thank him for his leadership.
Absolutely. If there's one thing Chuck Schumer isn't, he is not ideological.
No, not at all.
No. And one of the other things that we know, too, is that anything that is done in a bipartisan fashion is an unalloyed good. It is impossible to do damage if it's bipartisan. Any legislation, any spending, if you get Republicans and Democrats, the leadership, the Republican and Democrat Party together to do something together, it is always good. We've seen that in Illinois. Republicans and Democrats, when they come together to do something, it is always for your benefit.
Yeah, it's for the people. Mm-hmm.
Right. Uh-huh. Meanwhile, while they were speechifying over at the Senate, there's a House delegation that rushed off to Ukraine to visit with Zelensky to report back. They still haven't stopped waving those little flags. And one of the most excited members of the House Socialist Caucus was this Massachusetts dude, congresshuman, named Bill Keating. Oh, man. He scurried over to Zelensky to show him the vote totals. Look how good we did.
We did it.
Hello, sir. Bill Keating from Massachusetts. Good to see you. And I have something that you're really going to like.
Yeah.
This is the official tally of the vote.
Yes, I see.
For the supplemental aid.
Get out of my face.
Yes.
And look at that vote. 73%.
Yes. Thank you so much. 73.
That's a good vote.
Good.
That's a good vote. We did good. We did good.
Wow, butt kicker. Ooh. I mean, kisser, excuse me.
And you know, this is separate and distinct from the conversation about Ukraine funding and support in trying to repel Putin. But this whole theatrical performance is stomach-turning, for me, at least. And, oh, by the way, of course, they can't help but spike the football. It's not – their bipartisanship goes only so far. I mean, it doesn't include people like the former president or Tucker Carlson, both of whom McConnell blamed for making the process more laborious than it needed to be.
I think the demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which is interviewing Vladimir Putin. And so he had an enormous audience, which convinced a lot of rank-and-file Republicans that maybe this was a mistake. I think the former president had sort of mixed views on it. We all felt that the border was a complete disaster, myself included. And Chad, you remember covering the phases we went through. First, there was an effort to make law, which requires you to deal with Democrats. And then a number of our members thought it wasn't good enough. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all. That took months to work our way through it. So we ended up doing the supplemental that was originally proposed, which dealt with not all problems. It didn't solve the border problem, but certainly addressed the growing threats at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trump, being characterized as don't do anything because, I'm cynically want this to be a political issue rather than don't do what you're proposing to do with Langford carrying the water, because this is about leveraging the power of the purse to get Biden to make policy changes that the executive can be made and therefore focus the responsibility where it belongs. And, oh, by the way, it was Speaker Mike Johnson who said there's not going to be foreign aid funding without addressing the border. And he rejected what McConnell and Langford had cooked up with Democrats in the Senate. It's a little bit more complicated than Senator Free's frame there is suggesting. For more on this, please be joined by Jed Babbin, former United States Deputy Undersecretary of Defense. He's a contributor to the Washington Times and the American Spectator as well. Jed, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So what's your distillation of this $95 billion package and the speechifying from McConnell in particular?
Well, anything bipartisan is certainly totally controlled by Chuck Schumer in the White House. Mm-hmm. We've known that for a long, long time. So being bipartisan is kind of a definition of being bad. But in this case, we had to do something for Ukraine. We have to have an interest in stopping Vladimir Putin's progress, and we have an interest, not a vital national security interest, but a definite national security interest in blocking Putin from getting any farther into Ukraine. So, Ukraine is probably not going to win this war. We've waited too long and spent too much time debating about what aid we should be giving them to really have any good come out of it. The Europeans are trying to claim that they're sending 90+% of the aid to Ukraine. Nonsense. Germany sent a few tanks and they didn't work, so Ukraine sent them back. I mean, that's the kind of thing that Europe is doing. Mm-hmm. But, at this point, going forward with aid to Ukraine is a good thing for our national security interests. Nobody seems to recognize that, and certainly not Marjorie Taylor Greene or Bob Good or Matt Gaetz or any of those idiots.
But what are they doing with our money? I mean, last time, I think $70 billion was used to help promote or support their small businesses. So what is it for this time?
Well, supposedly it's for direct military aid, and supposedly it's partially repayable. Of course, $10 billion of that is, partially a loan. It's never going to be repaid. I think we have a situation clearly where Ukraine is corrupt. There is siphoning off of our aid. and it's going to corrupt purposes, but still we have to try. We can't not do it and let Ukraine just fall and let Poland and Moldova and the rest of the Eastern Europeans fall back under Russian control.
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things there. But first, I want to get your distinction. You said it's in our national interest. It's not a vital national interest, but it's a national interest. What's the distinction?
Well, a vital national security interest, and this was taught to me by a really smart guy, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dick Myers. We have national security interests and we have vital national security interests. A vital national security interest is something that protects our direct freedoms under the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, and so forth. When those things are threatened, we go to war. If we have the freedoms of space, cyber, seas, and our own airspace threatened, that's when we go to war. Other than that, there is no reason for America to intervene into a war. There is a reason for us to help others and other countries, but we don't have a reason to go to war ourselves. We're not neocons. Conservatives are not neocons. Mm-hmm. We do not want to intervene in just any old war that comes up. We do not want to have insecure borders. We do not want to have our foreign policy subsumed to the United Nations. We do not want to do any of those things. It's like Henry Now wrote in his great book, Conservative Internationalism. That's what we really are. We're conservative internationalists. We do not hesitate to interfere in the affairs of other nations when it's in our interests, but we do not go to war unless we have a vital national security interest.
When McConnell said in his speech on the Senate floor that aid now, it's sort of an ounce of prevention sort of speech, and aid now lessens the chance that we'd have to put American troops on the ground in Eastern Europe. But are the two really connected? That if this $60 billion to Ukraine wasn't en route, that we necessarily are looking at the prospect of American troops on the ground there?
Not necessarily, but we have to look at the fact that Ukraine borders NATO nations, Poland, for example. Mm-hmm. If Poland is attacked, we go to war. That's in the NATO treaty. That's the mutual defense obligation. If one is attacked, all go to war. So I guess, really it's not true what Mr. McConnell was saying. He's saying we're not going to go to war over Ukraine. He's not saying that. I'm saying that. The fact of the matter is we go to war where our treaty obligations call us out, and that's the basic truth of it. If we go to war over Ukraine, we'd be making a huge mistake.
And what is you said it in terms of Poland, Moldova, the Baltic states, the argument that's been made about Putin's revanchist ambitions.
Yeah.
But what is you would know better than I, what is the real assessment of the likelihood of that, the capacity that Russia has to move beyond Ukraine and face a prospect of trying to take a NATO member and knowing what that would implicate?
Well, I don't know that Putin has made a decision yet to conquer Poland or conquer. Well, I don't know if Moldova is even a member of NATO at this point. But the point really comes down to, I think we can't totally assess that. What we can do is we can look at Russian and Putin's philosopher, Alexander Dugin. Alexander Dugin wrote in his book, Foundation of Geopolitics, and Putin is a Duginist. He is someone who believes in Dugin and follows what Dugin says. Dugin wrote that unless Ukraine is conquered, Putin may as well never even bother with the rest of the Russian Empire in terms of restoring it over Eastern Europe. So he's going to go after Ukraine till hell won't hold it. And I think that's what we have to recognize. We have to aid Ukraine again, but not send U.S. troops, not get directly involved.
But so what do we? So what's our horizon here? And this whole and there's those are Ukraine decisions. Well, at some point it's got to be a decision that's in consultation if we're the underwriter or a significant underwriter. And so do we give this a few months to see what happens with the $60 billion, and then we're back to make an assessment and potentially more funding? Do we watch this play out over the next year? What's the approach that's taken once this money is and these the other forms of aid are sent? How do we then process and position with respect to Ukraine?
Well, I think we're going to have to cross that bridge a couple of months down the road. But, and I emphasize this with a capital B, I think Ukraine is in great danger of losing this war. They're not just short of troops, which they are, and Russia can continue to feed troops in. You know, the Russian economy is like 10 times the size of Ukraine's. But they can also, Ukraine is not just running out of artillery ammunition, they're running out of artillery barrels. You can only shoot so many thousands of rounds through a 155 millimeter howitzer before the barrel wears out. And, you know, even if they ordered them now, even if we tried to manufacture them now, it'd be 18 months before we could get them delivered. So, you know, this is going to be a very bad time for Ukraine. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And, you know, a couple of months from now, we're going to have to face this question again.
The position of House Republicans. I mean, I read your piece in the Spectator, and I agree with you. I'm not pushing for Mike Johnson to be deposed or anything like that. But to get nothing out of this along the lines of either a change in border policy or a change in energy policy, particularly energy policy. I mean, I don't want to actually prioritize one, but with respect to geopolitics, obviously Biden's energy policy is enriching our enemies like Russia, like Iran, and that doesn't make any sense. To not use the opportunity to make these bigger arguments and to really try to leverage the power of the purse, slim as the majority is, I just thought was a missed opportunity for Johnson.
Well, I totally agree with you. Don't get me wrong. I am not against the Republicans trying to do more for our border and trying to do more to stop Biden. What I am for is trying to get them to get their act together. You know, the basic point is there's so few votes. There's only like a 2-vote majority right now. And thanks to people like Ken Buck, who resigned early, you know, we have a very thin majority. If the Republicans can't get their act together, what they ought to be doing is they ought to be telling Biden nothing, I mean nothing, passes the House until you do something about the border. Nothing. We will do no work. We will do no jobs. We will not clear any of your appropriations bills. Nothing. Nothing will get done. I don't care if the government stops. I don't care if there's a government shutdown. You know, that's the point. They have to have enough guts to do this, and they don't. They simply don't.
Jed Babbin, former United States Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, contributor to the Washington Times and American Spectator. Jed, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Hi, it's Sean Thompson here. You know when you're at the mall and you go to those directory signs, the one that says you are here? Well, imagine that directory is a map of your preparation for retirement. Would you know where you are? My friend Tom Fortino at Alpha Wealth Group is offering you the opportunity to not only find yourself on that map, but also find the route toward a successful retirement. He calls it his retirement roadmap. You'll get an analysis of where you are right now, whether you're at risk if the market drops again, whether you're taking advantage of the latest tax